Melissa, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning to all the participants, and thank you for your interest in this webinar. Today, I would like to tell you briefly about the update to the reporting system under Article 15 that have been made to facilitate reporting on newly listed POPs. The main focus of the presentation, though, will be on PFOS, or perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, its salts, and perfluorooctane sulfonyl fluoride, which I will call PFOS from now on. I will be telling you why there's this focus on PFOS and what type of information is requested. So first, I'll start with a little bit of background on the reporting format. As you may know, under Article 15 of the Convention, parties are required to report on their implementation of the Convention. The COP has decided that this has to be done every 4 years. So since the entry into force of the Convention, we are now at our third round of reporting. In this round, it will be the first time that parties are required to provide information on POPs that are newly listed in 2009 and in 2010. So in 2009, there were 9 new POPs, and in 2010, endosulfan was listed. So to facilitate this reporting, the COP at its 6th meeting requested the Secretariat to update the electronic reporting system to include these new POPs. So this is what a part of this presentation will be about. In addition, I will be telling you about a whole new section of the reporting format that's dedicated to PFOS. So in the next few slides, I will be showing you some screenshots of the actual reporting format and to give you some brief examples about how the new POPs have been integrated in the reporting format. In general, the reporting requirements for new POPs are not different than they are for the old POPs, since the obligations are still the same. So the changes to the reporting itself hasn't changed much. I will show you how in several places new POPs have been included and what kind of information is requested. So what you can see on your screen now is Section 2 of the reporting format referring to Article 3. Here, parties are to report on measures to eliminate or reduce releases from intentional production and use. That is for chemicals listed in Annex A and in Annex B, which includes PFOS. So what you see on your screen is this case lindane, and in a yes or no type of answer, parties are to indicate whether they have taken any legal or administrative measure either to restrict the use, production, import, or export of lindane. The years in which these measures were taken is also to be indicated, and then there's some space under remarks for free text entry where parties that have that information can tell us more about what type of administrative measures have been taken. Now, one area in which a significant reporting requirement has been included for new POPs is in Section 4, and that's for reporting on measures to reduce or eliminate releases from unintentional production. So in this case, this refers to source inventories and release estimates for chemicals listed in Annex C. What you see on the screen is the reporting format for the inventory of pentachlorobenzene, which is one of the newly listed POP added to the Convention in 2009. I'm not going to go into details about how to fill out this format, because there has been already a webinar on this topic last week, and you can find out more about it by going to the webinar library, which is accessible from the Convention website. Here is a screenshot regarding information required in paragraph 2 of Article 15. So parties are requested to provide statistical information on the production, import, and export of POPs. What you can see is, as I've mentioned before, the same information was requested for all POPs like endrine and heptathlon, and now we have included the new POPs in this list. The kind of information required here is bulk data on production, for example. So this is total amount that was used for, that was produced, example, for lindane or hexabromo diphenyl ether and heptabromo diphenyl ether. The bringing together all the data is more relevant, for example, for industrial chemicals, where the chemicals are used in a broad range of applications. And you will see how the format differs in that sense when we come to reporting on PFOS later on. So what I've told you so far is that reporting on the new POPs is not much different than for reporting on the old POPs, and we have included in several parts of the reporting format the new POPs to facilitate the provision of information about them. Now I will move to part D of the reporting format. So this is a section that did not exist before, and it was included so that parties could provide information specifically on the progress made in eliminating PFOS. And this is required by paragraph 3 of part 3 of Annex B to the Convention. I'll start with a brief background on PFOS. The structure of PFOS salt is shown on the screen. As I said, it was listed in 2009, and it was placed in Annex B. This means that it was listed with acceptable purposes. PFOS was also listed with specific exemptions, and I will just briefly explain to you now the difference, is that specific exemptions are those applications which at the time of listing, parties thought that alternatives were available, but time was needed for their phase-in, I'm sorry. So parties were allowed to use the PFOS in the applications shown on the screen for an initial period of 5 years. After this time, parties that have registered can still request an extension of the registration. In contrast, for acceptable purposes, at the time of listing, parties thought that there was no alternatives to PFOS for these applications in the foreseeable future. In this case, there is no set deadline in the Convention for the use of PFOS. However, parties are still to notify the Secretariat of their desire to register for acceptable purposes. Despite this lack of deadline, the Convention foresees a mechanism for the evaluation of the continued need for PFOS for the applications I've just shown you. And this is to be undertaken by the Conference of the Parties at its 7th meeting and every 4 years thereafter. This process is mandated by Part 3 of Annex B to the Convention, and at its 6th meeting, the Conference of the Party adopted a formal process with several steps on how this would be done, including on how information is to be collected to support the evaluation. So, Part 3 of Annex B of the Convention also specifies which type of information should be used for the evaluation. And as you can see, there is progress to eliminate PFOS, the production and use of PFOS, and information on alternatives. In 3 of the cases shown on the screen, this information is to be provided. in some form by reporting under Article 15. And that is why Part D was included in the new reporting format. So I will now show you briefly what the different questions are in this Part D of the reporting format on PFOS and what type of information should be provided, and also possibly where that information could come from. Questions 1 and 2 relate to the registration for specific exemptions and acceptable purposes. As I've mentioned, parties wishing to make use of these exemptions need to notify the Secretariat. So the question asked is really, do the parties making use and producing PFOS, excuse me, Okay, thank you, Dan. I apologize, there was a small technical issue on my part. As I was telling you, in questions 1 and 2, we're asking parties whether they wish to continue to produce or use PFOS and the applications for which they need to do that. So, and then further on, for those parties that have registered and wish to continue, the question is, have they undertaken a review of their continued need? Do they still wish to continue? And if so, what are the reasons? So, in the next questions, questions 5 and 6, then parties are asked about the amount of PFOS produced and used. And in contrast to what I've shown you before for reporting on paragraph 2 of Article 15, here detailed information about the quantities used for each application for PFOS is requested. And you can see in the table shown that there is space to provide this information for each year starting when PFOS was listed. So in terms of finding information, ideally, to be able to fill this table, parties would have undertaken an inventory of the production and use of PFOS. Failing such a detailed inventory, an assessment or a consultation with key stakeholders can also provide useful information. Examples would be ministries that deal with the sectors in which PFOS is used, for example, in agriculture for pesticides, and also ministries of interior, for example, in the case of the use of firefighting foams in airports or for military purposes. Customs is also a useful source of information in providing data on amount of PFOS containing products imported. For more details on undertaking an inventory of PFOS and potential sources of information, I'd like to direct you to guidance on the inventory of PFOS, which has been developed to support parties in updating their NIPs. There are also webinars on this topic that are available in the webinar library available on the website of the convention. Now, in order to phase out PFOS, parties are encouraged to switch to alternatives when these become available, but also to promote research into such alternatives. And in this case, questions 7 and 8 requests from parties and information they have taken in that direction. In order to find information on alternatives used, it's also useful to consult key stakeholders. In this case, industry would be a very good source because many of the applications of PFOS are in industrial uses. I also would like to direct you to the guidance on the inventory of PFOS for further information in that case. So last but not least, at the end of this part D, you will find a space for free text entry about comments and suggestions you may have regarding your experience in answering the questions. Now, this is important because, as I mentioned, it's the first time that Part D is included and parties are requested to provide this information. And the COP has requested the Secretariat to provide recommendations for any modifications to the process of data collection and on the format for the evaluation. Because in 4 years, this process will be repeated and improvements could be made. Now, where does all this data that will be collected, where will all that data go to? As I've mentioned, there will be an evaluation undertaken by the Conference of the Parties at its next meeting in May 2015, and the Secretariat has been requested to prepare a report to support the Conference of the Parties in its task based on the information provided by parties under Article 15. That is through the reporting format I've just shown you. In addition, this information will be considered together with a report prepared by the Persistent Organic Pollutants Review Committee on the assessment of alternatives to PFOS. This work is currently being undertaken. So I would also like to direct you to existing guidance documents on alternatives to PFOS, which may assist you in completing the reporting format. I've also mentioned during this talk a guidance on the inventory of PFOS, and there's also additional information that could be of use in the guidance on best available techniques and best environmental practices. And in the near future, a technical guidelines for the environmental resource management of POPs waste being developed under the Basel Convention will be available to parties. Last but not least, I'd like to remind you that the deadline for submission of the reporting format is drawing close. It's 31st of August, 2014. Thank you for your attendance and interest in this webinar.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Melissa, for the presentation. I'm not sure whether this is relevant for this forum or not, but I will ask anyway because I was involved in trying to get the invoice for the country problem for last year. But what we encountered is that because we decided in the initial meeting that we will concentrate on firefighting foam and carpet. So we couldn't get any data because the imports that get into the country don't specify anything about PFOS. So we currently do not have an idea where we are importing PFOS containing articles or not. Because I understand in the firefighting foam, some of them, those which still use PFOS, they use small amounts so that they are not obliged to write it on their list of ingredients. So it was very difficult to find out that information. So in that case, how do we report, even though I'm not involved with the reporting, but out of interest, how do we report that kind of dilemma, if I may put it that way? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ndodvu, for raising a very interesting and pertinent point. If I caught your point well, correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that it is often difficult for stakeholders even to know that they are using PFOS because either it's not indicated on the articles, or sometimes the amounts used are so low that there are no reporting requirements of any kind so to the authorities. Am I correct? Did I capture your question well?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, that is indeed a problem, and it's one that is prevalent in not just, I mean, in most countries. We had another question relating to that, is how do you identify then, and this is what the inventory guidance brings you to eventually, is to really know that PFOS is present, and for you to be able to do an estimation of how much you have, you would need to use some kind of detection technique. And these can be quite costly and, of course, not accessible to all parties. And, of course, in some cases, as I've mentioned, it's much more evident, as in the case of pesticides, where PFOS or the PFOS-related substance would be one of the key components of the pesticide mixture. But for PFOS-containing articles, knowing or understanding their presence is indeed a problem. So maybe other participants in the webinar would like to share their experience on how they may have, whether they have encountered this and any solutions they have found.
Thank you, Melissa. We had a comment from Dadan. I don't know if Dadan is still around. Dadan, are you still with us?
Yes, yes, I am.
Would you care to give your comment?
Which comment? Sorry.
Okay, I read that you said it's very good to provide additional information beyond operational aspect.
Oh, that's what Melissa has provided. It's very good. Hello. Dan, could you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
I complimented Melissa for providing.
Okay. Thank you.
Background and in additional information, which is very good. It's beyond the operational aspect. Thank
you, Dadan. Melissa is telling me that I cut her response to Ms. Ndlovu. My apologies for this. I will let her go ahead. I thought she had finished with that.
Thank you, Dan. No, you didn't cut my response, but I was opening the floor to other participants who may have some experience with the problem that Ms. Ndlovu has just so well exposed, and if they may also have some information on how they dealt with that. So I opened the floor to the participants.
Hello, thank you, Melissa. If I may just add a small comment to a follow-up to my question. We also, I think you are right that we need to have analysis done on our sample, on the articles that we suspect that they may have people. But of course, that is very expensive. That may be very expensive, especially for some of our countries. And eventually we were able to, we didn't necessarily identify anything, but at the end, some more information came up, even though we added a test that they think that we need to follow it up, because there's this material that is currently being used by furniture shops, which at the time we didn't have access to, so I'm still not sure whether it does contain people, but the properties that mixture has makes me think that it may contain PFOS or PFOS-related chemicals, as they use it to varnish couches, sofas, and beds, so that they are water resistant or stain resistant, which I think those are part of the properties of PFOS. But when we went to one furniture shop, they wouldn't show us the material. I'm not sure whether the Southern Environmental Authority is following it up, as I was working for them as a consultant. But those are some of the challenges, because eventually we couldn't identify. And on the firefighting form, I think I can't remember the supplier, because I went to their website. At least for them, they specify that they are not, their firefighting form is free of people. At least those ones we roll them out. But then there are other brands that we use, which when you go to their website, there's nothing mentioned about people. So that leaves a gap where we don't know whether we have people or no people. And even our import inventory doesn't say much about any of them. So it was quite challenging to try and get information on that.
Yes, thank you again for bringing up this problem, which is, of course, one that is very prominent for industrial chemicals. They are widespread, they are in many articles, and information about their presence is, of course, not readily available. You brought up the issue of firefighting foams, and it's true, this is one of the major uses of PFOS, and one that could be present in many countries because they've been imported. And in this case, it could be that the information on the presence of PFOS can be found in the material safety data sheet associated with the foam, but also in most countries, or at least in many countries, the major producers have moved away from PFOS. So new stocks might not contain PFOS so much as older stocks. And so this is another way to understand, to try to get an assessment of the presence of PFOS, is to look at the temporal, let's say, trends in the import and in terms of in production of PFOS. Right, thank you.
Well, you may be taking some more time to come up with comments to Ms. Ndlovu's own comments, or to the responses by Melissa or her presentation. I take the opportunity to point out that the pop-up window on your screen contains a folder which is a PDF version of Melissa's presentation. You have to select that folder and click on download in order to download it. And if you have any trouble doing so, we will forward it to you through your respective emails at the end of this session.